GameChangers Podcast, a fan's perspective on rugby league. Today's our second recorded episode. We're going to be discussing... I'll get into a bit of a season preview for the 2021 season. We're going to go through each team over the course of 2 episodes. We're going to go with teams 5 to 12 today, and then top 4 and bottom 4 in the next episode. So, Jeff, Simon, we're going to start with the team that finished 5th in 2020, and that's Parramatta. So,
great way to start, Nick.
We'll start with their gains and their losses. And then after that, we'll make an evaluation on whether they'll improve or regress in 2021 and where you think they'll finish.
Can you tell me what regress means?
Slide.
Okay. Sorry, Mick.
So, in 2021, Parramatta have signed Keegan Hipgrave and Bryce Cartwright from the Titans. Mm-hmm. Michael Oldfield, Nathaniel Roach coming off the back of a knee injury, multiple knee injuries from the Warriors. Tom Opacek, Isaiah Papali'i and Joey Lussick from Salford. They've lost Kane Evans, David Gower, Andrew Davey, George Jennings, Stefano Utoikamanu, Jai Field, Brad Takarangi, Daniel Alvaro, Jamin Salmon and Penny Terape.
Geez, that's a lot of ins and outs, isn't it?
It's a lot of ins and outs.
Has David Gower gone to cricket, Mick?
He's retired. David Gower's retired.
Parramatta. What do we make of them?
I think Parramatta had a window to challenge for a title. I think that window's gone. I'll be honest. I think the inability of Mitchell Moses to shine in big games, I think it hurts him a lot. Brad Arthur, this will be his 8th season in charge. Whether maybe they're tired of hearing the same voice, but nothing seems to change at the back end of the season with Parramatta. They seem to go out in straight sets. I mean, in 2019 they had that massive win against the Broncos, 50-odd nil. But from 2020, the Broncos, they win 3 games out of 20. So building that team is probably not that big an achievement anymore when you look back at it. I just think they're going to have to cover for the loss of Michael Jennings, who presumably will be missing for the year on that drug suspension. I just think it lands with Mitchell Moses. He consistently just goes missing in big games. I mean, even in that semi-final against South, weren't they up by 6? He had a simple penalty goal that would have put him in front by 8. He's hit the post. And there was just a lack of concentration. South picked up the ball, raced away, and then raced away with the game. I don't see, judging by the gains and losses, I don't see where Parramatta improve. And I think they slide this year.
You make some very valid points, Simon. Just firstly on Mitchell Moses, I disagree in some respects, because I think Mitchell Moses has carried that team probably for the since he's been there, and the pressure's been on. And if there's any club that is under pressure or that gets put under pressure, it's Parramatta. They haven't won a premiership since 86. So if there's any club that is demanding success or their fans demand success, it's Parramatta. I just think Mitchell Moses, too much pressure is being put on him. I just think with the development of the halfback,
Dylan Brown. He's a super player.
I think with a couple of years under his belt now, a little bit of pressure will be taken off Mitchell Moses. Brad Arthur, 8 years is a long time, and I just think with Para, the more you make the semis, the more times you make the semis, the more pressure he gets put under, because they're there and they're thereabouts, but they keep fading.
Right.
So, and we haven't spoken about any other team so far, but I think if there's one team that's going to be under pressure this year, it's probably them more so than anybody, and Brad Arthur, because you're right. They've made the semis, they've been thereabouts, they've challenged, and they've just faded away. Their ins and outs, I don't think, I've always said that Bryce Cartwright, in terms of ability, has got all the ability in the world. It just depends on what type of Bryce Cartwright they get. Keegan Hipgrave is I think it's Hipgrave.
Yeah.
He's tough. He's rugged. You know, Michael Jennings, massive loss. Even at 32 or 33, before he got suspended or before he was stood down, he was outstanding. So, pardon me. I just think I agree that I think they'll be thereabouts, but I think they're more. I'm leaning towards them sliding more than improving with what they've done. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Mick?
I probably see them with those losses and gains. I just can't see any improvement, and I think there's been talk of Shane Flanagan, maybe Parramatta's looking at him, and they've come out and denied that and said we're fully supportive of Brad Arthur.
We've heard all that. I mean, we've heard clubs deny everything before, but
yeah,
we know
of course.
that's, you know.
Yeah. But and I do think it gets to a point where, for Parramatta, it feels like they've been in this position for a while now, where they're in the top four, just missing the top four. They're sort of on that cusp, but they just don't have what it takes to get to that next level, and I can't see how that changes in 2021.
And I think, as I said before, the more you're on the cusp, the more pressure that you get put under.
Yeah.
And which means the fans and the media and whoever are going to start asking questions. Can Brad Arthur or can the playing roster get him over the line? That's been proven as a no so far. So really, if you're a supporter of Parramatta, you would say, you know what? He's on his last chance.
Yeah.
And I think if they have a slow start to the year,
it's just going to mount.
It's going to mount.
It just every season it looks more and more like Brad Arthur isn't a coach capable of winning a premiership.
Interesting. I said the same way.
Yeah. Sixth in 2020 was the Roosters.
Wow.
So
Jeez, that's funny to hear you say that. Six, the Roosters.
Yeah. So they came off the back of 2 premiership wins in 2018, 2019. Bit of a regression in 2021.
There's that word again, Mick.
Yeah, they said it was, well, the media speculated a lot of it was because of their ageing roster. I tend to agree with that in some ways, maybe a bit stale. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the Roosters?
Any player movements, Mick?
Well, they've gained Adam Kieran from the Warriors, who's a half centre, and Joseph Suwali, which was talked about massively. And they've lost Mitchell Orbison, Kyle Flanagan, Pawasa Farmasili, Ryan Hall, Christian Tuipulotu, and Sonny Bill Williams.
Well, looking at who they've lost, they've basically lost a lot of fringe players other than Mitchell Orbison. So they've really got the same roster. Yeah. And I know that Boyd Cordner won't be playing for 12 weeks, but from where I sit, I don't think that's a bigger. I mean, I know he's the leader, but I think they can cover that.
Yeah, he was nowhere near his best last year.
I think the Roosters last year, for whatever reason, didn't produce. My view on the Roosters is they've played a certain style for such a long time. I'm not questioning what Trent Robinson has done because the success has been, unparalleled. But for them to continue to play the way they do for so long, it's got to take its toll. And, they've got a couple of ageing players,
Oh, there's more than a couple.
Yeah, they've got Brett Morris, you've got Josh Morris.
Rory Hargraves is
Rory Hargraves, the hooker. Jake Friend. I mean, whether I'm willing to write them off, I wouldn't do that because they're just such a successful club. Whether they improve on last year, I don't know. The jury's going to be out. I'd like to see the halfback. They've got a lot of raps on the Walker boy.
Yep,
and
Sam Walker.
They've got that young Adrian Lamb's son, Lachlan Lamb. But I think the big thing is this Suwali. I mean, I've seen the highlights reel, but the highlights reel don't really tell us whether he's a first grader or not. He looks like he's got a lot of ability, but Yeah, I think the jury's going to be out on the Roosters. As I said,
Seven-
I wouldn't write
17.
it off.
I think in one way they'll improve because they'll have Victor Radley back and Sam Verrill back as well. But
Did the ACL on the same night?
yeah, I don't think enough's been mentioned about how they basically hung Cole Flanagan out to dry. They basically told the kid after 1 year,
He wasn't good enough.
you weren't good enough, and I find that really strange. And for a club that's as professional as the Roosters, profess to be,
Was he, Simon, was he just warming the seat for the Walker boy? Did they do that just to get through season?
well, they had Lachlan Lamb there. They could have ran him for a year.
Yeah, that's a fair.
It's
a really strange decision.
It
I
is.
agree with that.
It is.
And for the Roosters to do that, you wouldn't expect them because they're such a professional club and they don't. It doesn't happen very often with them.
Yeah. And now you're going to possibly throw a rookie halfback into that equation. So how can you expect him? And what if they don't make top four next year? Do we cast Sam Walker aside as well?
That's interesting. A lot of questions to be asked.
I don't see them finishing higher than sixth at the moment.
Wow.
Judging on that roster.
Yeah. But I think you made a really good point. Victor Radley was a massive loss. I have to be honest, I didn't realise he was that good. And even the hooker. The hooker's going to put enormous pressure on Jake Friend. Personally, I think he should be, if he's fit, he should be the starting hooker. Yeah. That's how good I think this kid is. But I think the exciting thing about, if you're a Rooster supporter, is obviously the hype with Suwali. I just hope that they don't blood him too early. If he's good enough, play 100%. But I'll reserve my judgment.
Yeah.
I tend to agree. Yeah. Sort of on the same length. I don't see too much improvement or regression. Same as with Parramatta. 7th in 2020 was the Newcastle Knights.
That's an interesting one.
New coach last year, Adam O'Brien. Made the semi-finals. How long had they not made it previously?
Since 2013.
Since 2013, so got them back to the finals. No one expected them to do too much once they were in the finals, and it turned out to be
they didn't.
fairly accurate. In 2021, they've signed Bailey Hodgson from England, Dominic Young from England.
Sounds like a soccer player.
Tyson Frizzell, Sawaso Su, and Jack Johns. And they've lost Aidan Guerra, Tim Glasby, Herman Esese, Andrew McCulloch, Sione Matautia, Mason Lenor, Tautau Moga, and Tyrone Roberts-Davis.
Jeez, that's a lot of experience they've lost. Just with Newcastle, and I get that they made the semis last year, and last year was a really difficult and strange year, we all know that. But, watching Newcastle play last year, I'm a real believer that they actually played better football in 2019, for whatever reason that was. I think they got found out defensively, especially towards the back end of the year, and their performance showed where they got pummeled in the semi-finals. The jury's out on Aidan O'Brien. Yep, it's all good. They made the semis, but if you look at their roster and you go back even to last year and now, that is a top 4 to top 6 team. And for the games and what they dished up last year towards the end of the year, that just wasn't good enough. And I think the biggest thing with them this year is the Mitchell Pearce saga. I firmly believe, and I'm not interested in what he's done off the field, that is not our concern, but I've just got this feeling that he probably should have been let go, because I think it looked like towards the end of the year that he just needed a change. I might be proven wrong, I don't know. Tyson Frizzell's obviously a quality player, but I don't know if they needed strengthening in the forwards, to be honest. I'm looking maybe more outside backs, I think they're thinking of playing Blake Green at 5'8", who's 36 years old.
Coming off an ACL.
Coming off an ACL. You know, whether there's going to be improvement, I'm not sure.
I think, personally, the Mitchell Pearce incident, you can't underestimate the effect that's going to have on the playing group, because obviously the people involved are friends with, a particular person. Yeah. So that if that fractures the playing group, that's going to end in disaster. My other thing is they just have never settled on a 6 yet. I mean, they've tried Kalen Ponga there, Mason Leno's had to go there, Kurt Mann's had to go there, and all of them have been... Connor Watson, all of them have been reasonably unsuccessful. And, yeah, as Jeff said, the squad is a talented one, but, yeah, I think there's issues underlying at Newcastle that I don't think they're going to fix in one season.
Thoughts on the Adam O'Brien racist scenario? Obviously, we don't know the full story.
And it's his first year in coaching, and he came with a lot of hype because he's come from the Craig Bellamy School of Coaching. Yeah. Yeah. I think, and we learnt last year that, not everything works with certain players, the ranting and the raving. It's his first year. I'm willing to give the bloke an opportunity to see how he goes. He's got that year of experience. Whether he's up to it or not, I don't know. Simon's stressed the fact about the Mitchell Pearce again. That could be massive for them, because if there is any fracture within that club, they'll just collapse. Yeah. And because he's such an integral part of what they do.
Yeah, of course.
At halfback, it could go either way. Yeah. Whether they improve or not, I don't know. Personally, my view is I don't think they'll make the 8.
Yeah.
I just, Kalen Ponga's super talented, but for me, he's just a little bit too hit and miss. We need to see a bit more consistency in his play.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's Newcastle.
Yeah. 8th in 2020 was Cronulla. Even more so than the Newcastle Knights, where a lot of people were surprised they even made the 8. Yeah. Obviously, there was that game towards the end of the year where they beat the Warriors, and that was almost going to decide who got that 8th position. Cronulla ended up winning. But yeah, there were some media reports saying they were the worst ever team to make the finals.
That's a tough call. I think not enough was made of John Morris's achievement of getting that side to the 8.
Yeah,
that's I tend to agree.
As a rookie coach, I thought that was great.
And I think with the players, and Michael will go through the ins and outs, but he had a lot to deal with last year. And,
of course he did.
Of course.
He inherited a club where, they back-ended contracts and, we talk about aging rosters and, I know players play longer now in rugby league, but you've got to be able to pay to a certain level.
Yeah.
We're talking about, Matt Moylan hasn't given value for money at all.
Yep.
Aaron Woods is towards the end of his career. Josh Dugan, you don't know what you get with Josh Dugan. Admittedly, he did play well last year, but whether he can do that again this year, I don't know. Andrew Fafita was nowhere near as good as he was previous season. So they've got, I think there's more. Sean Johnson, played really well in patches, but I think there's more questions than answers with Cronulla at the moment, especially with the, everything surrounding the coaching and the Shane Flanagan, which I'm getting sick of. John Morris has done a pretty good job considering it. I mean, 2 years as a supporter, I'd take that any day of the week. What are their ins and outs, Michael, for next year?
So they've got Luke Metcalf, young fullback half from the Sea Eagles.
Yeah.
And Aidan Tolman from the Bulldogs.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? Aidan Tolman...
He's just a worker.
Yeah, 33, 34 years old. See, I'm trying to get my head around that. And,
they need another ageing prop.
As good as he's been for Canterbury, he's a toiler, he's an honest worker, but, I'm a bit confused by that.
Yeah.
When you look at every team, you have to look at... I mean, we all presume that they play to the same salary cap. Okay? You have to take into account the output of what every player brings to your team.
Yeah.
And, we all say it as fans, just give him 700,000 and, sign him. You can't actually do that. And I mean, the Sharks have got Dugan, Moylan, Fafita, Woods and Johnson, 5 players who basically take up half of their salary cap.
I reckon it'd actually be more, Simon.
Well, Wade Graham wouldn't be cheap.
Wade Graham. So that's 6 players who basically take up half or a little bit more than half of your salary cap. Now you look at the output, you look at what those players give you every week. If you're on in excess of $600,000 a year, you have to give an 8, 9 or 10 out of 10 every week.
They're not giving value for money.
They're not getting value for money.
No,
they're not.
No. I agree with that.
The recruitment and the retention has been poor at Cronulla, and that's why I take my hat off to John Morris, because I think he's done an awesome job. But not only that, he's got with a cap mess. He debuted Royce Hunt, the other guy.
Sifa Talakai.
There was 7. It was actually 7 or 8 players, and they've got some good. You're right. They've got some good players coming through.
The development of that Braden Hamlin-Ueli, who's now a Kiwi Test player. John Morris doesn't get anywhere near the credit he deserves.
Would you agree they've got a lot of hard decisions to make this year, Cronulla?
Yeah, of course. Around those big name players.
When you say hard, I think they're easy.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Because if you look at the players that he debuted, a lot of them are first graders.
Yep.
Yeah.
A lot of them are first graders. So, they're going to have to make a choice. We need to move these blokes on. And we know what happens. If you don't make hard decisions, right, you end up losing all this talent.
Yeah.
Because these blokes want to play first grade.
That's right.
Yeah, the losses aren't very notable either. They've lost Cameron King, Jason Kuya, Scott Sorensen and Bryson Goodwin. So Fringe players, and none of them stand out, as do the ins. So we can assume they'll probably be around that same position, unless other teams improve.
I think it all depends too on what type of decisions they make during the season. Because if they say to a few of these players that we mentioned, guys, you're moving on, that could cause a bit of a fracture, just depending, on where their mindset is.
Yeah.
Whether they can make the 8, I don't know. I don't think they can. I don't have them in my 8 this year.
No, neither do I. One thing Jeff mentioned in the last podcast about coaches who coach for today and coaches who coach for tomorrow, with all this speculation about John Morris and he's under pressure and maybe Shane Flanagan will get given the job again. If they get off to a slow start, does John Morris try and play it safe and just pick the 31-year-olds and just try and be 4-4 or 5-5 after 10 rounds?
I don't think he does.
Yeah, and I think it's unfair to have to coach that way.
No, well, you're right. I don't think he will. Yeah. Because last year he put his faith into a lot of blokes, a lot of young guys, and I just think for his development, right, and what he's achieved, I think he'll continue to give these young blokes. Because look, he's got these players on big salaries. He's going to have to pick them probably at the start of the year. Yeah. If they don't deliver, he's got no choice but to do it. Yeah. So, time will tell yet again.
Yeah.
I think I'd just like to mention as well, the way Shane Flanagan has come out in the media recently and sort of just put his name out there that he's going to return to coaching. It's actually disgusting. And
geez, that's a pretty tough. But don't get me wrong, I actually agree with you, Michael.
He just came across as the most arrogant person. He's saying, not exact quotes, but just came across, it's always going to happen because I'm a premiership winner. I'm a great coach. You got to back yourself, and then I read as well that certain Sharks power brokers gave him a spray about it, which
my view is, Michael, that I don't think he'll go to Cronulla because from what I'm hearing, there are certain people at that club that don't want him there.
Yeah.
And after what he's done, he won them a premiership. Great. Sensational achievement. But he left that club in a mess, along with a few other people. It wasn't just his fault, but I think it'd be a very bad move on behalf of Cronulla to actually go back.
Yeah. Well, he won him a comp, but peptide scandal, salary cap scandal.
Goes, hand in hand. Speak your mind, Michael.
Yeah. So, the team came 9th in 2020. It was the Gold Coast Titans.
Oh,
You sure
it wasn't the West Tigers?
No.
Thank God. They've notably had one of the biggest recruitment drives for a long while. So they've brought in Tino Fasua Malawi from the Storm, Herman Ese from the Knights, David Fafita.
You've practiced these words, haven't you? These names, haven't you, Michael?
Nah.
You can tell he just loves it.
David Fafita, Patrick Herbert from the Warriors, and Sam McIntyre from the Tigers. And they've lost Jai Arrow, Shannon Boyd, Ryan James, Young Tonomapia, Bryce Cartwright, Keegan Hipgrave, Dale Copley, Nathan Peets, and Tyrone Roberts.
I'll start with their losses, or the people that have left.
It's a lot of experience.
A lot of experience, but they are players they've wanted to let go.
Yeah.
Except maybe for Jai Arrow, because they obviously couldn't match what the Souths offered him.
Yeah.
But if you go through every other player there, they are players that I don't think the Titans wanted to keep, and probably wanted them to move on. If we look at the back end of last year, now I know it's easier to play some open, free-flowing football when you've got nothing to play for, right? And they just missed the semis. But if we look at the last 5 or 6 rounds, they were probably the most exciting team that I wanted to watch.
Yeah.
And the way they played. And I'm hoping, right, because I've got a bit of a rap on this Justin Holbrook. I think he can coach. And I just think the players that they've bought, obviously they're high profile. I think they are going to be massive improvers. And I'm not saying anything that nobody already knows.
Yeah.
But I just think the players that they brought in, they're going to add a lot to what they've already got, because they've got some really good, young, talented players.
Yeah.
And just see how I've got them in my 8, just probably on the fringe.
Yeah, I've got them on the fringe of my 8, and I think as well, we all saw what AJ Brimson could do in the Origin series.
I think he's going to take it, Michael. I think he's going to take a lot of confidence out of that.
Yeah, me too. And people forget, he missed around half the year with a back injury, came back second half of the year, was one of the form fullbacks in the comp, made his Origin debut off the back of it. I think he will be the breakout fullback, like the Pappenhausen of 2021.
I'm with you 100%. Yeah. Ash Taylor, I thought Ash Taylor was static, obviously, for a couple of seasons there, but I just think with the forwards that they've got, I just think he's going to go to another level. Simon, thoughts?
I thought he played well this year.
I still think the jury's well and truly out on Ash Taylor. Is he a top 4 halfback? I don't know.
Well, money tells us that he is. He should be.
Yeah,
I don't think he's there yet.
No, not
and
yet.
They're
But I thought he played well with Jamal Fogarty easing the load. I thought he improved last year.
Yeah, and you can tell by the signing of Tino and Herman SAS and Fafita, they're going to play.
Can you say Tino's last name?
No, I won't. I'll leave that to him, the expert. But obviously they're going to play a power game. Who will their dummy half be?
Mitch Rain.
Yeah, well, Mitch Rain was actually quite good last year.
He is, but
is he a better option than Nathan Peets?
Yes, but is that saying a lot?
No. What I'm saying is, if that's the only option they've got, I'm sure they've got a couple of young blokes coming through, but they need that experience around that dummy half area.
So we all talk about and forwards win matches, we know that, but the spine is very important too. Your 1, your 6, your 7, your 9. So their spine will be AJ Brimson, Ash Taylor, Jamal Fogarty, and Mitch Rain. Sorry, that's not a top 4 spine.
Okay.
And I think that spine may sneak into the 8, but I don't see the Titans.
Are you taking into consideration what they did towards the end of last year? Because really, they were probably the form side.
Yeah, I agree with that. They were the form side, but you've got to think in a COVID competition, the 8 was decided pretty early because just the way the competition went. There were a lot of teams that were playing for very little in that, and I understand they won games, and it was a better season for the Titans. But they had some improving to do because they were anchored at the bottom for a few years.
No question about that. And they've done something about it. You know, they've gone into the market.
Yeah.
They've bought players where they think they're going to improve, and I think they will.
Yeah.
Right? But they've still got to produce. You've got to, as you said, you've got to get value for money.
Yeah.
So
I think 2021 is going to see a lot of teams improve and only a few slide. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it's building up to be a good comp.
Yeah.
I think,
a good season.
I think, and as I said, I mean, we haven't been through all the teams, but I think it's going to probably the most even competition we've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
Because the talent is starting to get spread more evenly across the board.
Yeah.
Which is what you want.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of it will come down to coaching in the end.
Yeah, that's another topic for another day.
Okay, 10th in 2020, Warriors. Similar to the Titans, another massive recruitment drive. So they've bought Ben Murdoch-Masila, Kane Evans, Ewan Aitken, Adam Fanua-Blake, Sean O'Sullivan, Fringy from the Broncos, Marcelo Montoya, and Bailey Sirinen.
So they've strengthened their forward pack.
I think from what I can see there, I think what they've done is they've decided, and they should have done this a long time ago, they've started to get more of the Aussie flavour into that club because and that's no disrespect to the Polynesians because some of them are just absolute stars, but you need to have that mix. You know, they've got Kane Evans who's played a lot of first grade, you know, for Parramatta, for the Roosters. They got Ewan Aitken, which I think is a fairly good signing, right? If he learns how to pass the footy. You know, apparently Ben Murdoch-Masila's been killing them overseas.
Yeah.
You know, Bailey Sirinen's on the cusp of playing first grade. You know, I think their biggest signings, obviously the coach. Nathan Brown has had 2 stints, and we know the history, you know, with St George and with Newcastle. He's renowned for developing young talent, but he'd be the first to admit that this is probably his last chance as a first grade coach. It's a massive task with the Warriors. I mean, you know, we talk about untapped potential. We've seen that for years and years. I think, and this is an unbiased view, I think they're the big improvers of 2021 because of the players that they've brought and the mix that it brings, you know. And being Roger Tuivasa-Sheck's last year, I just think it might bring something out in them.
Yeah.
The thing with the Warriors, you just never know what you're going to get. The only consistent thing about the Warriors is their inconsistency. I mean, you would give up trying to pick them. Like, just week to week, you just don't know.
Do you think they were better last year, Simon?
Yeah, I do. I really think. I think they're on the cusp of doing something really good, and I'm glad Nathan Brown is the coach. I think he's. Although I admire what Todd Payton did, I'm really excited for Nathan Brown because he does work well with young teams, and he's not someone who's scared to develop young players. I think he'll lay it all on the line and do what he thinks is best for the club, and he's already started by telling 4 or 5 of them that they can't participate in the Maori versus Indigenous All-Stars game. It was probably unpopular, but club comes first, and I respect him for it.
I think with the decision for them to be based at Terrigal and they know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not too sure. I mean, things might change, but I think with that being based at Terrigal and they know at the start of the season this is where we're at, I think that's going to be a massive plus for them.
Yeah.
You know, because last year we know that their family wasn't with them, and I think they just seem to be a bit more settled. I mean, you know, I'd love to see them. I'd love to see the you know, the talent start to emerge and the promise that we've been, you know, that we've seen for a long time. So it'll be interesting.
What do you make of the Phil Gould appointment? It's interesting, isn't it?
Well, Phil Gould, we can never question his knowledge of rugby league. History tells us that Phil Gould is a control freak. He's even admitted it.
Yeah.
He's had a falling out with a lot of people. He had a falling out with Anthony Griffin, we know that. He had a falling out with Ivan Cleary. We know that. Ivan Cleary didn't want him there the second time of his second coming. He had a bit of a fall. Yeah, you're right. He tried to get Wayne Bennett to Penrith.
Yep.
I just think Phil Gould needs to do the job that he's been employed to do and not get involved. Phil Gould is not a coach anymore, and I'm not questioning his credentials. We can't.
He's just an advisor.
Yeah, he's won 2 premierships, he's won State of Origin, but you know what? Let it be. You know, if you're employed to be a consultant or if you're employed to be an advisor, just do that. And I'm sure, you know, Nathan Brown is not naive enough to think that, you know, that he can't bounce ideas off him, but only give your view when you're asked. You know, so, yeah, that'll play out. I don't think he will, because hopefully he's learnt his lessons from the past. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I also think it can't be understated what they did last year with all the drama around them and where they were based.
That's the unknown. You're right, Michael. That is the unknown, because you know of what happened. You know, are they going to be able to do it again? You know, so
well, I think the signing of Adam Fanua-Blake helps massively, because he's someone who is consistently one of the top props in the game.
Well, they said that I think they rated him with Papali as one of the top front rowers in the competition.
He's one of the best.
I'd take him any day of the week.
He's an enforcer.
Oh, no question.
All right, 11th. Got our bunch, the mighty West Tigers.
I'm not going to let you guys talk about the West Tigers because
no,
there's going to be a bit of passion. There's going to be a bit of anger.
Might be a nosebleed.
Yeah, there could be a nosebleed.
I've got a lot to say.
Okay.
So they've signed James Roberts, Stefano Toikomanu, James Tamo, Joe Hingawe, Tuki Simpkins, young back row from the Cowboys, and Dane Laurie. And they've let go Chris Lawrence, Chris McQueen, Robert Jennings, Matt Eisenhuth, Harry Grant's gone back to the Storm, Sam McIntyre, Josh Aloye, Josh Reynolds, Elijah Taylor, Benji Marshall, and Paul Momorowski.
Okay, I'll start.
No, I'm not going to let you start. I just want to say one thing. I mentioned with the Gold Coast that they've let players go that they've wanted to. I would say there's only one, maybe 2 players that the Tigers wanted to keep, and obviously Harry Grant was one of them.
Yeah, and Josh Aloye.
The rest, I don't think the Tigers wanted there.
No.
Simon?
Okay.
Yeah, it's a fair call.
Personally, I think the signing of James Roberts is huge for us. He looks to be in really, really good condition. His headspace looks good. So that's a great signing, because we lacked strike last year. Basically, any team that scored 20 points against us was going to win, because we just didn't have enough points in us. I'll actually call Joey Leilua a new signing, because he's lost 13 kilos. If you look at the footage of him from last year to how he is now training, it's a different person. I don't think we've ever seen Joey Leilua look like this before. So I'm now excited that we have strike on both sides. You have David Nofaluma, who was almost the leading try scorer last year.
He was the player. He was the Tigers' best player last year.
Yeah,
I agree.
Granted, we've lost Harry Grant, who I think carried us basically last year, and we've lost Josh Aloye. But I'm wrapped with the signing of James Tarmow, just for the professionalism that he brings. I think Joe Offengawi will add a lot to us. I think the players we've brought in will complement the side. I think overall it's a better squad than it was in 2020. I think Dane Laurie will be an exciting buy at fullback. I'm excited to see Adam Dewey grab the 6 jersey. My concern is still Luke Brooks. He's going into his 8th season of NRL. Hasn't guided this team to a semi-final series, and we've said before, well, Benji's gone now, so he'll own the team. Robbie's gone now, so he'll own the team. Mitchell Moses has gone now, so he'll own the side. He's never owned the side. He's never dominated games.
Can I ask you something, Simon?
Yeah.
They've put 8 years of hard work into Luke Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That would be over 150 first grade games.
It is.
Okay. I cannot remember him as a halfback who runs the footy team. I cannot remember him actually guiding the West Tigers single-handedly to a victory. And I don't expect that from a halfback every week. But what I do expect is I expect a halfback to be able to dominate on more occasions than not.
Correct.
Do we draw a line in the sand and say, okay, I mean, because we've drawn that many lines with him over the years, do we say to ourselves, okay, enough is enough. This is your opportunity, right? You're on your last chance. If you don't perform, we're going to find somebody else that will.
Well, I think Madge last year was the first time Luke Brooks has ever been dropped. And Madge showed his hand by
putting him
on the bench. And, you know, as we say, 8 seasons of NRL. We've spoken about this kid when he was coming through. He's the next Andrew Johns. Is it? Well, after 8 years, and we keep talking about the potential of Luke Brooks, after 8 years, potential is just talent that's not getting used.
That's a really good point, right? And if the guy's there, it's up to the coaches and the selectors to pick him, and they continue to pick him. So do we, I mean, obviously he's not performing. So we've got to say to ourselves, right, are the coaches picking the right players in the right positions, right? You're right. He doesn't have Robbie. He doesn't have Benji. No. This is a massive opportunity for him. You mentioned that you were excited about Adam Dewey at 5'8". My opinion on Adam Dewey is I think he's a talent. I think he's a star in the making. Personally, I don't think he's a 5'8". And people ask me that. People ask me why. I just think with his body size and how tall he is, I just think he might be a bit big for 5'8". I might be wrong. I just think he's really suited. He reminds me a lot of, because he's really good on his feet. He reminds me a lot of Mark Gasnier. Right?
He's deceptively strong.
Yeah, I just want to see him. I love seeing him one-on-one. And I just think at 5'8", there's too much defence around him. But again, I might be proven wrong. But I just think that he's more of a centre. I'd love to see him one-on-one. Because you're right, he is deceptively strong. You know, he's got he's got really good footwork. But look, he might be the answer to Luke Brooks on it. We don't know. But one thing the West Tigers have done is that they've strengthened some positions they needed to be strengthened. Yeah. You know, they've got some young players. That Blake, Michael, it's your turn.
Stefano.
Apparently he's got some raps on him. You know, Joa Fingawi needed a change.
Yeah.
You know, obviously Harry Grant's a massive loss.
Yeah.
But, you know, I said to Simon a couple of weeks ago, and he tended to disagree. I think they're morals to make the 8. I really do. I just think, you know, with James Roberts, with Luciano Leilua, you know, Joey Leilua, you know, losing all that weight, I just think that, you know, it's going to awaken the beast.
Yeah. I see him, if everything goes well...
Don't you dare say 9th.
No. If injuries are kind, I think they can go probably 7th or 8th, but pencil them in for 7th to 10th. That's my pick.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to be proven wrong.
I think I've got them around that 7th to 8th spot as well. I see, because they've gotten a lot of criticism over the off-season, letting Benji go, whatever you think of that. I just think I understand the people that are critical of the Tigers and their recruitment, because I think if I was looking, if I wasn't a Tigers fan, I could see why people would think, because you could say James Roberts, maybe his career, he's never going to get to the heights it once was. James Tamo's ageing. Joa Fahingawa was pretty poor last year.
James Tamo is the perfect signing for the West.
That's what I agree.
I just want to say one thing before we get on to another club. I think with the West Tigers, with the history of what's happened with the West Tigers over the last 10 or 12 last decade, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think if any club needed stability, it's them. If they continue to chop and change coaches, right, they put their faith in Michael Maguire, which I think is a good move. But if they continue to go down the path of chopping and changing and having that, boardroom dramas, coaches coming and going, enough's enough.
Yeah.
This is the time for them to stand up and to show us what type of club they are.
Yeah, I think the line in the sand was drawn with they're walking on eggshells comment that got leaked to the media, obviously by a player, and it backfired because, but we're walking on eggshells. But you've been an underachieving team for a decade. You're not the Melbourne Storm. The coach is the coach. Listen to what he says, and if you're not prepared to get on board with him, see you later. Because as you keep saying, Jeff, and as me and Michael live through every week, every year, the fans aren't going to accept this anymore. This underachieving anymore. There was a line in the sand, and when the club sided with Maguire, I think that was the moment that hopefully the players realised, well, close enough isn't good enough anymore.
And I think, Simon, history tells us the players have had a lot of say at the West Tigers for a number of years, probably too much. We don't know the ins and outs. I mean, we're supporters, and like everybody else, we hear stuff, and we're in a little bit of a better position because we know a few people around the club, so we hear things. But I think it's the time. I think it's their time, and I really hope, for your sake, because you guys are West Tigers supporters, that you guys, get the success.
And like you said, you think it's their time. It has to be their time. It just has to be.
Yeah. Anyway, is that it, Michael?
Nah.
You got one more.
One more team.
Oh, don't tell me it's St George. Let me guess.
The Saints. The Saints finished 12th in 2020.
I'm glad that you didn't say fifth last or fourth last, Michael. You trying to be nice.
So, not as big of a recruitment drive or much loss. Well, they've got a few experienced losses actually. They've brought in Pawasa Farmasili from the Roosters, fringe prop.
Very, very good player.
Yeah, actually rate him.
Jack Bird.
Yep.
And Daniel Alvaro.
Yeah. Losses.
Tyson Frizzell, Ewan Aitken, James Graham, Jacob Host, Corbin Sims, Jason Saab, Tristan Saylor, and Joe Lovadua.
And obviously they've lost Cameron McInnes because he's done his ACL, unfortunately. I'll go first on St George.
This will hurt.
No. As you said, they've only signed Famasili, Daniel Alvaro.
Farmasili did do a great job on loan for the Warriors, I think, as well.
Jack Bird. Now, a lot of people and a few St George supporters have said they've sort of laughed and scoffed at the signing of Jack Bird. I'll say this: Jack Bird, who reportedly the Dragons are only paying, I think, $400,000 for this year. I put him and James Roberts signing at the West Tigers. They both could be the signings of 2021. Jack Bird is worth a punt, and I know he's had his injury concerns. The time at Brisbane wasn't successful, but who has gone to Brisbane in the last 2-3 years and been successful?
Fair point.
Very
25.
Yeah, he's 25. He did his ACL at training. It's not persistent hammy. It's not persistent. He just did an injury that tore apart his season. I think he'll add a lot to St George. Player turnover isn't enormous, but they've signed a new coach who generally, when you sign a new coach, you get a bit of a bounce. The thing with Griffin is, and St George have put so much of their cap into Ben Hunt and Corey Norman, and they have underperformed for the last 2-3 seasons. They have underperformed. But I will say this, Anthony Griffin coached those boys in the under-20s and graded them and debuted them at the Broncos, so he does have a connection to them. I think he'll get the best out of Ben Hunt and Corey Norman. Whether that's going to justify their price tag, I don't know. But I see St George improving this year. A lot of people think they're favourites for the spoon. I disagree. I actually think they'll go a bit better.
Thank you for your kind words.
It's honest.
I just, when the coaching conjecture came up with Paul McGregor at the start of last year, I said to a few people that with all the coaches that were on the market, I really hoped they would get Anthony Griffin. The reason being is people underestimated his success that he had at Penrith, and we know how that ended at Brisbane. He's coached, I think, for 10 years and made the 77 out of those 10 years. Now, he hasn't won a premiership, but at Penrith he developed a lot of juniors that have gone on to play first grade. And I think one of the reasons that St George signed him was he's got that hard edge, which St George has been missing. You went through their outs. There's probably one, maybe two of those players that Saints wanted to keep. Obviously Tyson Frizzell, and you can't keep everybody. And Tyson's probably, whilst he's been outstanding for us, there's no question he's probably towards the end of his career.
Yeah.
Than at the start. Obviously Cameron McGuinness is a massive loss, but is Cameron McGuinness a $600,000 a year player? My answer to that is no. Right?
I disagree with that. Okay. I think there's Cameron Smith, Harry Grant, and then Cameron McGuinness.
Okay. My question to you then, Simon, is okay. If Saints were to outlay $600,000, and it's a shame that he's done his ACL, which meant that he's played his last game.
Yep.
I think the way that St George looked at it was they didn't want to put all their eggs in one basket, which is what they've done in the past. Do they take the risk of putting that money into one player, or do they take the risk of losing players like, who debuted last year, Max Fengai, Jaden Sullivan, Cody Ramsey, who I think are first-grade footballers.
Correct.
Unfortunately, Paul McGregor was in a situation where he was, dare I say it, coaching for
his career.
Yeah. And he put his faith into a lot of the senior players, and they didn't perform, right? And we saw a glimpse of the future of St George with these young blokes, and there's a lot more coming through. Saints, and I hate using this term, but they're in a little bit of a rebuilding phase.
They are.
They're a little bit lucky in the sense they've got some experience around that. But I just think with a coach like Anthony Griffin, I just think, I agree with Simon, I think they're going to improve. Whether that's enough to make the 8, I don't know. Everything, and I think everything that they do will hinge on Ben Hunt and Corey Norman. Yeah. Because not only are they the two highest profile players, but they're the two that handle the ball the most.
Correct, of course.
So look, as a St George supporter, I want as much success as I can get, but we need to be a little bit patient.
Yeah. I think even the loss of Tyson Frizzell, and he is a super player, and he's one of the first players picked for Origin every year and for Australia, and deservedly so. You won't meet a more wholehearted player than Tyson Frizzell, but as you said, Tyson Frizzell has played hard, tough football for almost 10 years in the NRL. Is he 29 or 30?
It's got to take its toll, Simon.
It does, but is giving him a 30-year-old...
He's 29.
He's 29. Giving Tyson Frizzell $600,000 or $700,000, which he deserves, St George offering him another 3-year contract at that money... It's not what they need right now. It
doesn't make business sense.
I don't think he's going to be worth that when he's 32.
It's not good business sense.
No, and a 32-year-old Tyson Frizzell isn't going to help St George up the ladder. But Jaden Sullivan, Cody Ramsey, I think they will. And we saw a trial last night. It was a younger sort of a trial, more reserve grade and under 20s trial. These Fiangai brothers. Rod Wishart's young son at dummy half looked terrific. There's a fullback, Tyrell Sloan. That's St George's future, and that's Anthony Griffin's future.
I'm going to make a call, and I'm either going to look like an idiot or a genius. There are two players at St George that I've got enormous raps on. One of them is Josh Kerr, who I think is going to play State of Origin football.
Yeah, well, he was 18th or 19th man last year.
Cade Ellis is untapped.
Yeah,
he needs to place a bit more first grade because I've got an enormous rap on him.
I'll give you another one. Someone I watched the end of 2019 and 20, I've really got a lot of time for is Jackson Ford.
There's no question.
I think he's a player.
People were questioning why they let Jacob Host go. There's your answer.
Jackson Ford.
You know, he's got a bit of skill about him. And look, there's a lot of upside, and I know it's hard for St George supporters to cop because we haven't had that success since 2010. But it's the dawn of a new era.
Yeah. And I think, as a St George fan, I think anywhere between 8th and 12th is where you're aiming at.
I'm glad you didn't say 9th, Simon. Well,
No,
really?
because I think if Anthony Griffin can unlock Hunt and Norman on their day, you
couldn't agree with you more.
Well, if you unlock them, you've got so much potential. I would say Zach Lomax is an elite centre, and he's 21 years old.
Yeah.
We've got a really, really good future, and again, for all those St George supporters out there, we need to understand why you can't keep everybody.
That's right.
But you would rather put your money into some developing players, right, than some of the ageing players.
Well, I'll say this: if Brad Fittler would have picked Zach Lomax for Game 3, New South Wales wins Origin.
Great call.
Yeah. I'll continue saying that.
All right, that's the end of the teams that came 5th to 12th in 2020. We're going to continue with the rest of the teams in the next episode. So for now, we're done. Game Changers Podcast, fans' perspective on rugby league. Jeff, Simon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
See you again soon.
Ta.